Coming up next on Tech News Weekly, it's me, Jason Howell, and I start off the show chatting with Kiang from Nothing about the Nothing Phone 2.
And I'm Mikah Sargent, and I talked to Ben Schoon of 9to5 Google about Samsung Galaxy Unpacked. Turns out it's a pretty iterative year.
I have my story of the week dealing with infotainment systems, and that may make you feel happy or sad, and that's exactly the point.
And I round things out with my story of the week. It's about Captchas. Can we please get rid of these ridiculous things? I'll answer that question coming up on Tech News Weekly.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Cisco Meraki. Without a cloud-managed network, businesses inevitably fall behind. Experience the ease and efficiency of Meraki's single platform to elevate the place where your employees and customers come together. Cisco Meraki maximizes uptime and minimizes loss to digitally transform your organization. Meraki's intuitive interface, increased connectivity, and multi-site management keep your organization operating seamlessly and securely wherever your team is. Let Cisco Meraki's 24/7 available support help your organization's remote, on-site, and hybrid teams always do their best work. Visit meraki.cisco.com/twit.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 296, recorded Thursday, July 27th, 2023. Galaxy Unpacked, an iterative update. This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. If you're hiring, you're currently dealing with a slowing economy, which adds to your challenges. Thankfully, there's a hiring partner who is focused on you and your needs, ZipRecruiter. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/TNW.
And by Duo. Protect against breaches with a leading access management suite, providing strong multi-layered defenses to only allow legitimate users in. For any organization concerned about being breached and in need of a solution fast, Duo quickly enables strong security and improves user productivity. Visit cs.co/twit today for a free trial.
And by Drata. Security professionals often undergo manual tasks of collecting evidence. With Drata, companies can complete audits, monitor controls, and expand security assurance efforts to scale. Say goodbye to manual evidence collection and hello to automation, all done at Drata speed. Visit drata.com/twit to get a demo and 10% off implementation.
Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am one of your hosts, Mikah Sargent.
I'm the other guy coming from this, downstairs den in my house, Jason Howell. It's not always set up. I know your setup, Mikah, is like static and always in place and ready to go.
Unchanging.
Mine is like sheer panic every time I gotta get it going. It's like I gotta, light the fire and do all these things to get it going. But anyways, we get there.
Yeah, this door basically remains closed. There are no kids. So I understand. It's just a different situation. Also, is the ukulele new, or has that always been there on the fireplace?
That has always been there, and it never moves because I never play it.
Got it. It's an ornamental ukulele.
Yes, exactly. If ever the inspiration strikes me, I might pick it up, but it doesn't happen very often with the ukulele. Anyways, we're not here to talk music, even though my backdrop might suggest so. We are here to talk about many things technology, but we're going to start off today. We're going to start off talking about the Nothing Phone 2. I actually had the pleasure of reviewing the Nothing Phone 2. I actually did it on this very show a couple of weeks ago. And it's a very unique device. So thought we'd bring on somebody from Nothing to talk about kind of the story behind the device, because I've given you the information and my perspective on using the device. Let's talk about the company and kind of what has led to the Nothing Phone 2. Joining me is Kiang from Nothing, of course, VP of North America. And it's great to have you here, Kyle. It's good to see you. We've had you on All About Android a number of years ago, so it's been a little while. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Yeah, really good to see you. Although we're not standing in the same place, so we can't revel at the fact that you and I are almost the same height. So we are very tall.
We don't get to do the back-to-back photo this time. So
That's right. Next time we'll make it happen. So, first of all, you joined Nothing, not a huge amount of time before. So you've been with Nothing for a little bit of time now. And the brand story is, I think, very interesting to me. And I thought might be kind of a good opportunity to kind of set up a little bit about what makes Nothing as a brand unique from other brands. I know you're wearing the Buds right now. Nothing has a very unique and very kind of consistent design language. Tell us a little bit about kind of, since you've joined, kind of the story about Nothing that kind of pulled you over and where we are with the Phone 2 compared to where we started with the Phone 1.
Sure. So, I mean, I think probably your listeners are kind of familiar with Nothing, but maybe to kind of fill in the stories. I've been involved kind of officially since this year, wearing a couple of hats, kind of setting up the U.S. business, and I'm also kind of serving as the interim marketing head for this launch. But I've been kind of friends, to the team since the start. We obviously, had a previous life together in this industry, and so I've been kind of involved since the early days. I think what you've seen from Nothing is this is year 3. When Nothing launched, it was more kind of sharing its philosophy, differentiating on differentiation in design, and kind of a focus on a more enhanced user experience. In the first year, obviously a pair of year 1 of headphones were launched. I think those were received positively. And in year 1, Nothing was differentiating itself on differentiation of hardware design. And I think for those of you that saw Phone 1, you saw that from a differentiated hardware design. I think that's probably some of the unique things you were talking about earlier. But I think where Nothing is now in year 3 is probably 2 things. Not just differentiating on different hardware design, which has been the reason why people have kind of raised their hand and said, we like Nothing. This is what we like, what you guys are doing. You're doing something different. But also in this device, you're seeing a differentiation on software design. And I think putting those things together. And so I think you're starting to see the bigger picture in terms of where Nothing wants to eventually go. To be totally honest, building a hardware company from totally scratch as a startup is not the easiest thing in the world to do. So it's kind of been a step-by-step where first making products, building up capabilities. And I think now in year 3, making a device that I think really kind of shows Nothing's potential. I think the response has been positive so far.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, it would be very easy if you were very easy, I suppose, depending on how you define that. But it would be easier to come out of the gate with a device that looks like every other device that doesn't have that kind of additional flair that it seems like the brand of Nothing is bringing to all their hardware. But you guys were doing that from the very beginning. If you had to take a look at the first phone, the Nothing Phone 1, and where we're at with the Nothing Phone 2, I'm sure there were certain particular lessons that were learned from the initial kind of outing versus where the new device is. If you had to kind of summarize those,
Sure.
What were some of those lessons that really made it into this latest model?
Yeah, I mean, I think the things that are obvious are, one, to be totally honest, and I think, and Carl's mentioned this in some conversations, is for Phone 1, it wasn't an internal software team. So this is the team that worked on Nothing OS, which I think is one thing we've gotten very, very positive response on, is built by an entirely internal software team that I think has done a great job. And, so there's some things that people have been really responded to well. So I think that's one. And then also there's a premium nature to this device in terms of a step up and certain, some of the design elements, some of the components that I think make it a premium product. And so those, I think, are the 2 things probably to call out on Phone 2. And I think people have kind of taken note of that.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I didn't have the opportunity to play around with the Nothing Phone 1. So I was very happy to get the Nothing Phone 2 from you guys for review. And for certain, the software experience was really enjoyable. It's always kind of like this weird kind of nebulous thing in the world of Android, because I mean, at the core of it is Android running underneath, and there's the companies that do that supplement the, let's say, the vanilla experience with a little bit of, features, special things. There's some companies that lean heavily into that highly kind of highly modified and highly customized approach. I felt like the Nothing Phone 2 kind of strikes a good balance. It has a very very unique approach to the software, kind of the visual aesthetic, the design of these things, but also not straying too far away from what you get and almost loading it, overwhelmingly so with all sorts of features that you're almost dodging in use. Like I didn't really get that with the Nothing phone. How does Nothing tell the story of the design language when it comes to the software?
Yeah, I mean, I think we maybe have a stronger point of view in the sense that I don't think we think mobile software is in a great place in terms of user experience now. And, I think for it to be a fast, kind of smooth experience in terms of what you're describing in terms of being snappy, that's kind of like table stakes. And I think on the device, it's a product that has to work well, has to, the camera has to be good, has to perform well. That has to happen. But I think to what you said earlier in terms of a unique product, it's where the uniqueness is and where the differentiation is, where we, I think, are thinking about what we kind of say internally is purposeful, intended smartphone usage. And I think our point of view is actually a little bit different. Some of the things you probably noticed is, and it's actually, to be totally honest, like there are about 3 or 4 things on this device that I think probably do change your behavior a little bit beyond, just performance itself. I think we've gotten very positive response to the monochrome design. And I think, to be very honest, I'm not sure how much you've used it, but like for myself personally, it's actually changed my behavior in terms of how I kind of use my smartphone. I found myself being really bad at kind of going into apps. And, historically, I think our brains are trained to, look at like colorful icons and get trapped and spending 30 minutes on our smartphone when we weren't necessarily intended to. It actually makes you have to think about what you're using, what apps you're going into and why you're going into those. That's actually been something I think that's been very kind of, called out by people. And so far, we've gotten a really positive response on. In addition, I think you're seeing a design language that we're starting on, like the weather widget, for example. It doesn't require you to go into an app. You can one click and see, the forecast for the day, the forecast for the hours, and you're not having to, go deeper into the device. And so we talk about, purposeful smartphone usage, and that's, I think, what we're trying to do. And I think beyond design language that people respond to, you're starting to, I think, see the future of what Nothing's trying to do. And to be totally honest, I think, in Phone 1, the company was in its second year. Now it's being able to show, I think, what the design intention is, and more importantly, where there's, consumer benefit.
Yeah. Now, touching a little bit on the hardware design again, I think it's, important to point out that Nothing has a design relationship with Teenage Engineering, who I highly respect. Yep. The products and their kind of aesthetic, their approach on product is really impressive and very interesting, right? So the two brands work hand in hand as far as that's concerned. I'm just kind of curious to know how or what that design conversation looks like when you're working with a company and an outfit like Teenage Engineering to design the aesthetics of not only the phone, but I know the earpieces as well. Like what is that conversation like?
It's pretty collaborative. To be totally transparent, it looks like I'm in a closet right now, but I'm actually in our design studio in London. And ironically, I stuck up here because we're having a launch party to kind of celebrate the teenage guys are here. And it's kind of like one team, where, they've led kind of the overall industrial design and focus. We have a design team here in London that kind of takes that leadership and works pretty closely. So it's pretty seamless. And I think the one thing we're trying to do is, and I'll ask you guys a question. How many companies out there have a design philosophy where when you see the product, it's from that company?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. Like that's not always that
Maybe
easy, especially in smartphones.
I would say Apple.
Yeah, Apple does a really great job of differentiating themselves based on the design itself. But a lot of the others out there, everything looks very similar.
Yeah, and I think Nothing's kind of born out of this kind of fatigue on sea of sameness. And I think the goal is when you see a Nothing product, it has a design philosophy and ID that, that you can identify with. And it's been received positively. And the teenage guys and the team here in London have, I think have built something around design that's been really well responded to.
Yeah, indeed. So kind of speaking of that, the kind of this sea of sameness, like what's your take on other phone makers out there? Is this current age of smartphone, like, are they resting on their laurels? Where do you see kind of this competition kind of lagging, or your competition specifically? Where are they lagging compared to what you guys are doing?
I don't think it's anybody's fault, but I'll be totally honest. This is a really tough industry, tough business. And I think it's very tough to differentiate and take risks. And I think any big company, they don't really have the luxury or the freedom to do that. I think, Nothing's still pretty early stage, is willing to take some risks. I think we have to, because we think something has to happen in the industry or nobody else will at this point. I don't think we think anybody is coming behind us into this industry because the barriers are so high and it's so challenging. And so I think we think about this as if we don't do it, nobody else will. And so we're trying to do differentiation that is thoughtful, makes a better product experience, and kind of creates a little bit of fun around it. I mean, I think we have this internal saying in terms of to make tech fun again is we're probably the only people in this industry that are willing to do this in these categories. And we know why others can't. It's not they don't want to, but it's much easier said than done.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see if others follow in the footsteps and go like, hey, maybe we should take some risk. I mean, obviously there's the foldables. And I know that I saw that like foldables from nothing, probably not coming anytime in the near term anyways, compared to, at least according to what I believe I read, Carl Pei had mentioned something about foldables and it not being on the horizon. So, but
not immediately.
Yeah, not immediately.
I mean,
but
I think to build on your point too, it's, I mean, to be totally honest, like people have been calling out other people doing transparent design now, which was kind of the start of nothing. And so I think we showed that, we can do that better than anybody. But I also think, like, to your point, like, I'm not sure, how much you spend time with the device, but like when we launched Phone 1, I think there was a lot of questions on the glyph being a kind of a gimmick. And to be honest with you, I can understand that sentiment, but I think on Phone 2, you're starting to see kind of a philosophy where we're actually, doing product innovation where the intention is for you to be able to keep your phone down. And there's probably 2 or 3 features that are actually useful. The third party notification system where, you can keep your phone down and you can see the progress of an Uber getting to you. I used that on Sunday. I was flying, here to London from LA, and like I had an 8-minute wait for an Uber, and I literally had the phone down. It allowed me to do like 3 or 4 more things before I had to go. We have an essential notification on the back of the glyph where basically, 15 years ago, sure, on a BlackBerry, there's a little light, notifying you that you had something coming in. But the difference is you need to be able to have a notification where it tells you what app and specifically what the contact is. So for the 2 or 3 people that you want to kind of make sure you get a note from, you can have your phone down for a meeting for an hour and a half and you don't have to worry about it. But an important piece of information can come through. So it's like there are those type of things that we're getting to where now I think you can see legitimate usefulness for the technology.
Yeah, and it's neat when it works the way you hope that it will in that regard too. You're like, oh wow, that sequence is going off. Oh, that means my wife is, just sent me a message. It's cool when it connects the dots like that, because I do leave my phone. In fact, I have, my Pixel 7 Pro and my Nothing phone face down right now because, hey, when we're doing podcasting, we don't want to take any chances. So I do that a lot. So it's nice to be able to do that and still get that feedback back as well. So anyways, Kyle, thank you so much for hopping on. I know we got to let you go, Kyle Kiang, from Nothing. That's, us.nothing.tech or nothing.tech to see what everybody at Nothing is up to. You can get back to your collaboration with Teenage Engineering. And Kyle, thank you so much for hopping on with us today. We really appreciate it.
No problem. See you guys soon.
Whoa, wait, hold on. Was that a beer?
All right. So long joke is actually the guys at Teenage here and the guys in London are big beer fans. So we legitimately made a beer.
Great.
So
that is great. Like you said, you can immediately tell.
Yeah, yes. Right. Indeed. Right on, Kyle. Thank you. Enjoy the beer. We'll see you soon.
All right. Jason, Michael, good to see you guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. Coming up next, Captchas, our favorite thing in the whole wide world. Maybe there's a change coming that might make you happy if you don't like Captchas. That's up next. That's Micah's story of the week. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. If you're hiring or your company's hiring, you're currently dealing with economic uncertainty, right? It feels like it's everywhere. There's this big looming question mark. That adds to your challenge, right? It's not only are you hiring, but there's that uncertainty aspect that just makes things a little more difficult. Now more than ever, it's important to hire the right people and to do it faster and more efficiently. That way you can keep overall costs down. And thankfully, there's a hiring partner who is focused on you and your needs. And that is, of course, ZipRecruiter. From pricing to technology, everything that ZipRecruiter does is for you and what works best for you. It's all about you. And right now, you can try them for free. All you have to do is go to ziprecruiter.com/TNW to check it out. And this is how ZipRecruiter actually prioritizes your needs. Straightforward pricing. So you're going to know what you pay before you post your job so you can stick to your budget so you won't be surprised along the way. You can reach more qualified people. Tons. I mean, they're everywhere on ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter actually sends your job post to more than 100 job sites. And you'll find great candidates faster with their smart technology and invite the best matches to apply for your job. And you can beat out the competition for talent. ZipRecruiter actually lets you invite candidates you really want to apply to your job before other businesses can beat you to the punch and snag them. Hire the best with the help of a partner who's all about you. That's ZipRecruiter. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter actually get a quality candidate within the first day. Just go to this exclusive web address to try ZipRecruiter for free. It's ziprecruiter.com/TNW. Again, that's ziprecruiter.com/TNW. ZipRecruiter is the smartest way to hire, and we thank them for their support of Tech News Weekly. All right, Mikah, over to you and your story of the week.
Yeah, so hold on, I need to solve this captcha real quick. I think that looks like a smiling dog. Yes. So there are 3. Those are buses and a bike. No, captchas are annoying. Captchas occasionally for me at least, can be kind of a delightful thing because I will come across captchas that I haven't seen before. They've been different technology. So occasionally you'll get one where it's like, put the puzzle piece in the right place. And it's like, oh, thank God I don't have to identify buses for once, or I don't have to identify, choose all the squares that have the bike in it, choose all the squares that have stoplights in it. That can be a blessing. But the old school captchas of type in these characters and they're all wiggly and sort of look like you are eating magic mushrooms or something, are annoying. And what is so frustrating is it seems as if there's not been a technological shift to try and get past the captcha, right? So it turns out that there are some companies, big companies, that are working on this, and we're just on the cusp of this change. Shira Ovide over at the Washington Post wrote about captcha boxes and kind of the technology as it is, how the technology might change, and what people can expect. And I found some really interesting sort of tidbits in this piece. There was one company that was talking about captchas and said that, quote, for every $1 a business loses to bogus transactions, it turns away $30 by mistakenly blocking or discouraging legitimate customers. So captchas, of course, are a tool used by websites to make sure that you are a human being who is visiting that website. There have been very common in ticketing systems for a long time. If you wanted to buy tickets to a show, typically captchas would pop up in the first place because they don't want robots going in, buying a bunch of tickets and then selling them for higher costs. But different sites will add captcha sort of stops depending on whether they can determine if you're a human being or not, because they don't want bots browsing their site, because if a bunch of bots go to a site and sort of drive up traffic, that costs that site money, potentially more money than they would otherwise. If you are, an online seller, then you don't want robots buying your products because this could be a bogus transaction. And so there's this sort of balance that these companies are trying to strike between making sure that they stop bogus sales or bogus transactions, and then also trying to make sure that they don't annoy people so much that they don't visit a site. I recently, it was some sort of tool that was supposed to be, it was, I wish I could remember, but whatever it was, it needed to have pretty good security, right? But it there was some error that kept requiring the CAPTCHA to be put in over and over and over again. So I eventually just gave up on going to the site because no, I don't have the time. And Cloudflare, actually, which is one company that has a CAPTCHA system in place that sites can use, their data shows that people take about 25 seconds on average to solve a CAPTCHA. 25 seconds on average. So we are wasting, again, on average, 25 seconds, if not more than that, in just solving CAPTCHAs because we're trying to prove that we're human and that there's not a robot doing it. Now, another problem with this is the fact that there are a number of ways for robots, quote unquote, to solve these CAPTCHAs. In fact, AI, even before this new generative AI transformer model craze, has been solving CAPTCHAs. There have been systems that have been built specifically to solve CAPTCHAs. On top of that, ChatGPT was used, according to this piece, to solve even more difficult CAPTCHAs and other, sort of interstitial systems that have been in place. And even if you get past the AI systems that have been built and ChatGPT and all this stuff, there are also companies who pay human beings who are actually human and therefore are using the CAPTCHA correctly to solve the CAPTCHA and get into the system for the robot to do the work that it's supposed to be doing. So you can imagine someone who's buying a bunch of tickets to a Taylor Swift show. They've got to get through that CAPTCHA, right? So this this company or whatever, this person hires 100 people to get through the CAPTCHA part so that they can go in and buy up as many tickets as possible and then sell them for more money. This is the situation where you're going, CAPTCHAs are annoying, CAPTCHAs are a waste of time, CAPTCHAs are this. And hey, at least they stop the bots, right? At least, no, they don't. So why are we still using them? Well, there are companies that are trying to look past the CAPTCHA. One of those is Cloudflare. Apple is doing a new system that I'll talk about in a moment. And then there are just a number of companies in general who are trying to use a standard called Privacy Pass. And Privacy Pass is sort of a framework system that is going to, a protocol is the best word for it, that is going to serve as a means for newer CAPTCHA style systems to kind of bless a specific person, a specific instance, and then have that kind of carry through. So it's almost as if you are given, a membership card, if you will. And that membership card is your access on different sites. And as you're using it, then you kind of are, okay, this is that person. I know this is that person. We don't need to keep doing all of these things to make sure that they are truly a person and not a robot. But the membership card doesn't have your name on it, right? It is protecting your privacy. And that turns out, this is something that I did not know about CAPTCHAs, because a lot of this stuff was sort of a collection of information that's been out there. But I was not aware that in many cases, CAPTCHAs are also capturing some of your data and using that as part of the CAPTCHA network. So the privacy aspect of CAPTCHAs is also a big concern, and why companies like Apple are trying to make sure that there is a privacy preserving way to confirm that you're a human being without necessarily confirming that you are you specifically. And so with Privacy Pass and these new technologies together, then you have a system in place to grant human beings access to different sites and get into things. Now, let's talk about these technologies. There are a few approaches that can happen on the back end, and that's kind of where companies are looking now. They're saying, even though we're trying to determine that this person is a real person, let the computers talk to each other to determine that this person is a real person. So it's kind of ironic. It's not what you'd expect, right? In one way, there's a technology that kind of looks at the data out there that shows typically where the bots are, what devices, what computers, what browsers the bots are using, and then looks at what you are using whenever you log into a website or try to buy a ticket or whatever. And if you don't fall into that huge group, then it can kind of reasonably assume that you are you and not a robot. So they do this using things like the typefaces, the fonts that are available to the browser. Say that most bots are, the software system that they're using is Windows XP on the Chrome browser, and it is like, two software versions out of date. So Cloudflare or whatever site or whatever service, sees that there are, multiple 100,000 accounts that are using this kind of browser, this specific system, and they know that those are bots. Now, if you log in with your Mac running Safari on the latest version of the software, then they can, with somewhat accuracy, assume that you are not a bot. That's one way. Another way is by looking at cursor movements. So lots of websites right now do have the ability to determine where you are resting your cursor on the page. And then because they can determine where you're resting your cursor, they can see how your cursor moves across the page. And this is this technology has been around for a long time, and they call it like hotspots. So a website designer or an online shop can look at where people tend to focus their virtual attention and see, oh, maybe I should move that buy button up, or I should move this to the left or move that to the right. But because they can see how you're moving your cursor, they can recognize that human beings move their cursor in a way that is different from the way that a robot moves the cursor. So an AI system is probably going to have very specific and direct movements, whereas as I'm moving my mouse across the screen, there's all these subtle little sort of shifts and bumps as I'm getting to where I'm trying to go. And I might be using the cursor to kind of move across the page and try to see what I'm to look for what I'm trying to find. And so they can use that. Again, it's kind of a scoring system. It's a vibe check, right? It's not giving robot. I think it's probably a human. And so those systems can kind of work together. So it's actually all of these systems in the background that are working up towards a score that is like, okay, we've got like an 87% certainty that this is a human being, because they're using this browser on a phone, and they are scrolling through the page in this specific way. We think it's a human being. And then the systems can kind of talk to each other in the background and go, okay, you're real, you can get through. And this takes the onus off of the human being to have to prove themselves. There's also another system that Apple specifically is working on, and it will be available in iOS 17. So I have iOS 17, and because I'm running beta software, and it is something that that sites are going to have to take advantage of. It's not something that's just going to be on by default, or rather you can turn it on, but it won't necessarily kind of communicate with the system by default. And I'm trying to find it now. But essentially what it does is it will, okay, so it's called automatic verification. And the idea is if you are logged in to an Apple ID on your phone or on your Mac, then there's a high likelihood that you are a human being who is logged in on your device. And it's not just that alone. It's also, I just saw this person, on their phone doing something. Now they've gone to the mat. Like, there are all of these little kind of subtle things that play into it, but all of that together can kind of go, this is a human being. So essentially what's happening is we're moving from this Captcha system where it is on the human being to prove that they are themselves to being kind of a background thing. But in the meantime, Shira offers some advice. She spoke to different folks who, work on these systems. And the biggest piece of advice that I read in the article, and also that seems to kind of be across the industry, is using a VPN is more than likely going to result in you having to solve Captchas. And I can confirm that's true, because when I try to do a Google search while using a VPN, I am often presented with a Captcha. It is just the way of things. And the last note I want to make is that people should be aware that in many cases, we are actually doing kind of free labor for artificial intelligence, because when we are identifying stoplights, it's not bikes and mopeds or motorcycles, actually, according to this piece in the Washington Post, don't fall into the same category. The kind of original engineers of this version of Captcha figured out that globally, people recognize, no matter what country they're in, have a higher chance of being able to understand what is and be able to recognize a bike and a motorcycle. So if you get one that says, click on the bike in this, it's probably not that you're training AI. But if you get one that says, click on the squares that represent a bus, or click on the squares that represent a traffic signal or other things, you're probably training an AI system that will be used to, in theory, in the future, help vehicles move around on their own and be able to recognize that. So yeah, we're going to be moving on from that free labor that we're doing, hopefully. But at the same time, you have to wonder, Jason, is it like, why would these systems want to move on if right now they have like the entire population helping to train these AI vision systems?
Yeah. I'm a little suspect on that too. They're getting a lot of free labor. Anytime a company of that size, the size of Alphabet or Google or Facebook or whatever has that much free labor happening just automatically for them, I don't see them switching away from that anytime soon.
Yeah. So let's hope that Captchas go the way of the dodo, but I think they're going to be around for a while, even though companies are trying to move past them and also help to preserve and protect our privacy. Let's take a quick break before we come back with my interview. Up next, we're going to talk about Samsung's event where they announced new hardware. But first, I want to tell you about Duo, who are bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. Duo protects against breaches with a leading access management suite. You get strong multi-layered defenses and innovative capabilities that only allow legitimate users in and keep bad actors out. For any organization concerned about being breached that needs protection fast, Duo quickly enables strong security while also improving user productivity. Duo prevents unauthorized access with multi-layered defenses and modern capabilities that thwart sophisticated malicious access attempts. You can increase authentication requirements in real time when the risk rises, and Duo enables high productivity by only requiring authentication when needed, enabling swift, easy, and secure access. Duo provides an all-in-one solution for strong MFA, passwordless, single sign-on, and trusted endpoint verification. And Duo helps you implement zero trust principles by verifying users and their devices. So start your free trial and sign up today at cs.co/twit. That's cs.co/TWiT. And we thank Duo for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All righty, folks, it is time to talk about Samsung's latest devices. Yes, Samsung has announced a slew of new devices. It actually did so yesterday as we record this on Thursday. Joining us today to talk about Samsung's new hardware is Ben Schoon of 9 to 5 Google. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, great to get you on to talk about this stuff. Let's kick things off with the Galaxy Z Flip 5 and the Fold 5. In your piece, you mentioned that the phones are quote, very iterative. Is there anything to get excited about with these new devices? And should folks who own the Fold 4 or the Flip 4 consider upgrading to the 5s?
Well, as far as things to get excited about, they are objectively better phones. Like they've got a faster chip in the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. The thinner profile, I actually have my Flip 5 here. The thinner profile is very nice. And then on the Flip, you have the new cover screen, which is actually genuinely useful now. As far as upgrading, if you have a Fold 4, it is definitely not worth going to a Fold 5 because the differences are so minimal. The other day, I actually was holding my Fold 4 in my pocket while I was getting ready to set up the Fold 5. Didn't even realize it was the Fold 4. I thought it was the Fold 5. The Flip 5 is a genuinely good upgrade, especially with the trade-in, because you can get $900 for a Fold 4 or for a Flip 4. It's only $100 to upgrade. That's absolutely worth it. But Fold 4 to Fold 5, definitely not.
Understood. Now, what is new in the latest versions outside of that display? Because I want to talk a little bit more about that display in a moment. But are we getting better cameras? Are we getting better button click feel? Does it have a scent now? Like what did they change?
Well, they have the exact same cameras. One of the new things is the hinge on both of them. It is now a hinge that has a water drop inside, so the display doesn't condense down quite as far as on the previous versions, which means that the gap that used to be in place on the older versions is gone. There's still a little bit of a gap, but it's not to a big point. And that makes the phones much thinner. And you feel that especially on the Fold 5. Like it is a much thinner, much lighter phone, which is really like genuinely nice. But really in terms of hardware, they're basically the same. Some of the new colors are nice. I like the blue on the Fold 5, and I like the mint color on the Flip 5. But really, they're the same phones. The crease hasn't changed. It's really just a hinge gap and a new chip under the hood. That's about it.
Got it. Did you say a water drop, like a droplet of water?
So not an actual water droplet. The shape of the screen when it's folded up is the shape of a water drop. That's just what that's called.
Got it.
But it basically just means there's more room when the display is folded up, so it's not quite as tight. Normally that would fix a crease, but for whatever reason, Samsung's implementation just did not do that.
Understood. Okay. So then with these phones, one would think that availability would be soon if they just sort of, just go down the line and pop out the chip and pop in a new one. When are we looking at being able to get our hands on the latest 5 or Flip and Fold 5? And of course, talk about pricing. You mentioned that trade-in thing, but what are the standard prices for these new phones?
Yeah, so at least in the United States, pricing hasn't changed. It's still $999 for the Flip and $1799 for the Fold. Trade-in offers are really good. You can get about $900 from Samsung at the most for the Flip, towards the Flip, and you can get $1,000 towards the Fold, which is it's a great deal. Should the prices have gone down, that's up for discussion. But pre-orders are open now, and everything starts shipping, I think, August 11th.
Understood. Okay. Well, then let's move along because that pretty much takes care of the Flip 5 and Fold 5 to talk about the Galaxy Watch 6. Yes, it has. We've made it all the way to the 6th version. Tell us about what's new here. Certainly a lot, right?
If only. The Watch 6 and the Watch 6 Classic, the regular Watch 6 is a Watch 5, just with a new chip. The new chip is the Exynos W930. It's a little bit faster, it's a little more efficient, and it gave them the ability to make the watch just a little bit slimmer while still giving it a bigger battery. So it should have much better battery life. It feels nice on the wrist, but there's really not that much new. Except they did also make the bezels a little bit smaller, which means there's bigger display. It's a good look. The Watch 6 Classic, same thing. It's just a new chip in the same design that was used in the Watch 4 Classic, but that means they brought back the rotating bezel, which is always nice to have.
Yeah, that's one of the things. As an Apple Watch user, I have always been jealous of that idea of the rotating bezel. I think it's one of the things I used to love about non-smart watches that I've owned in the past, and it's just a nice little fidget built into my wrist. And this is an actual practical fidget. For folks who aren't aware of Samsung's offerings, what does that sort of tactile mechanism do in the software?
So in Wear OS, because these are Wear OS watches, the rotating bezel acts kind of like a scroll wheel. So just like on the Apple Watch, how you have the what do they call it? The
digital crown. Mm-hmm.
That will let you scroll through things, and then certain apps let it zoom in and stuff like that. It basically will do the same thing. You scroll one way, the interface will go down. You scroll the other way, it'll go up. And then I think if you're on the home screen, it'll let you scroll through your widgets, which is a nice little touch.
Nice. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I'll ask the same question here. Is this a worthy upgrade for folks who are rocking the last model of the Galaxy watches?
It's honestly a tough one. If you're having trouble with your battery life over time and stuff like that, it might be worth upgrading. But realistically, the Watch 4 to the Watch 6, there's only so many differences, and none of them are really worth the cost. But there's like with the folds and the flip, Samsung has trade-in deals. I don't know them off the top of my head, but it'll make a dent in the cost.
Mm-hmm. And availability, when will folks be able to get their, I guess, wrists on these?
So it's the same as the fold and flip. They'll be shipping August 11th, and the Watch 6 starts at $299 and the Classic at $399, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Oh, wow. Those are really good prices. Again, coming from the Apple Watch world, where it's rather expensive. Okay, cool. And then the other big announcement is the Galaxy Tab S9. And you talk a little bit about how Android tablets kind of as a whole are making a comeback. I was hoping you could start there before we dig into this specific model and talk about the accessories that it has and everything else, because again, I want to sort of cover the whole gamut of our listeners. When you say that Android tablets are making a bit of a comeback, I assume you mean in comparison to where we are with tablets right now. And I mean, the only other tablet I've seen out in the wild are those very inexpensive tablets from Amazon that folks will occasionally buy for their kids. But Android tablets are back.
Yeah, so Android tablets, they've always had a reputation of not being as good as the iPad. And through the pandemic, they've kind of resurged in popularity. People started taking an interest again. Back in the day, we had a bunch of Android tablets. Back in the Nexus days, Google had a whole lineup of Nexus tablets, and Samsung had a bunch of tablets, and everyone had a bunch of tablets. So you could get a different size, you could get different performance, different prices, everything. Before 2020, that was kind of stopping. No one was making Android tablets anymore. Google was done. Lenovo was kind of taking a back seat on it. And even Samsung really wasn't experimenting as much. They had cheap ones and they had expensive ones, and that was it. Now they're kind of making a comeback. We just had the Pixel tablet launch last month. And now Samsung's refreshing what was already the best Android tablet out there.
Okay, so yes, let's talk about the the S9, the S9 Plus, and the S9 Ultra. That's a lot of tablets. Talk about the differences between them. And then again, in your piece, you mentioned that it's kind of an accessories game this time around.
Yeah, so Tab S9 is an 11-inch tablet. The S9 Plus is, I think, like a 12.5-inch, and the S9 Ultra is a giant, ridiculous 14-inch tablet, which that's for someone, I'm sure. It's not for me. But the big upgrade this year with all three of them is that they're IP68 water resistant, which is very rare in high-end tablets, especially nice-looking ones. And then also the 11-inch now has an AMOLED screen, because in previous years, Samsung's big selling point has always been OLED displays in tablets, but they always let the 11-inch have a LCD display. So it's a nice upgrade to have that this year as well. But yeah, the accessories were really what caught my eye when I got to play around with them, because realistically, they're the same software. They're, One UI, Android 13, multitasking, all that stuff. But the accessories really impressed me. They have an official rugged case this year, which seems really protective, but isn't like really overly thick like a lot of other ones are. They have their keyboard, they have a folio case, they have a really nice official origami case, which can fold to where you can have the tablet in landscape view and then also in portrait view, depending on how you set it up. And then they also have there's an S Pen included, which is nice. And there's, a lot of the cases have docking options for that. One of the ones that really caught my attention is, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a special attachment for one of the cases that lets you put a clear piece of plastic over the display. One of them is completely clear and is designed to make it feel like you're writing on paper when you're using the S Pen.
Ooh, cool.
The other one has the same texture, but it's a privacy filter. So if you're using the tablet out in public, you can people can't see what you're seeing if they're off angle. It's just only you can see it. And both of those have existed in traditional screen protectors, but those are like you install them, they're on there all the time. And a privacy film especially is kind of annoying if it's there all the time. So I think it's really cool that they have it to where you can just kind of use it on demand.
That is okay. That's really cool because yes, I was actually surprised at how many quote unquote normal people I see who are using those privacy filtering screens, and I thought of like, man, I'd hate to have that on my phone at all times because it does make a difference in what you can see through it, or in this case, a tablet. What you see through the tablet. But I think about like healthcare people buying these in bulk and being able to have that on there temporarily, but maybe outside of when they're doing that, they could have that taken off. That's a pretty clever idea. Now, these three options and forgive me, I don't have the historical knowledge of Samsung. Has Samsung in the past offered multiple tablet sizes like this? And if they have they ever done a 14-inch tablet?
Yeah, so this year's lineup is literally just a refresh of last year. Last year, they also had S8, S8 Plus, and S8 Ultra, and they were all the same size. The only difference this year in terms of the hardware is, like I said, it's water resistant, and then you have OLED on the smallest model. But this is only the second year they're doing that. So if you're kind of looking to, buy on the S model, get the better version, this is definitely the year to do that.
Understood. My last question for you. I joked about it along the way, but it does seem to be like a very iterative year for Samsung models. Now, Apple, as the comparison here, does a year where it's a pretty all new design or an all new look and feel. This is for the iPhone, and then a year where it iterates, and then it's the TikTok cycle, right? What is it? You never know with Samsung. Is it that things tend to be pretty iterative? Is it that this year kind of stands out as a super, okay, I guess these are the latest devices? Just give me your insight about what's going on here. And if you think that folks will be encouraged to buy these latest and allegedly greatest devices from Samsung.
Yeah, I'd say with Samsung, you never really know what you're going to get. Like, they don't follow a strict pattern. But I don't think that makes these bad devices. Like, I think all of these are objectively going to be the latest and greatest. Mm-hmm. They're just not all that different. It's going to be, if you're the kind of person who jumps on every single upgrade as it comes out, these are really, really boring. But if you're someone who hasn't upgraded their phone or is, looking for their first foldable, these are great foldables. If this is your first tablet in like 5-6 years, the Tab S9 is great. And the same thing with the watch. If you're still on a Tizen wearable because those are, starting to lose update support, this is a great place to jump in. You've got a better design, you've got better performance, and things have kind of stabilized from the switch to Wear OS. So yeah, it's boring from someone who's just looking in because they're like constantly like, oh, what's the latest? What's the latest? Mm-hmm. But if you've been waiting for your time to upgrade, this is really a good time because things are as stable as they're going to get. Because surely we can't have another year that's quite this iterative.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Ben, I want to thank you so much for your time today, taking me, someone who's not as versed in all of this, through everything, and also for our listeners out there who might be curious about what's going on with Samsung. Of course, folks can head to 9to5 Google to check out your work. But if they want to follow you online and keep up with what you're doing, where should they go to do so?
Well, yeah, you'll see me on 9to5 Google all day, every day. But if you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter, Threads, and every other competitor at NexusPen.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ben. Good to see you. All right. Coming up next, I'm going to talk a little bit about in-car infotainment systems, and that either fills you with joy or fills you with dread. And that's kind of the point of what I'm going to talk about. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Drata. Is your organization finding it difficult to collect manual evidence and achieve continuous compliance as it's growing, as it's scaling? Well, as a leader in cloud compliance software by G2, Drata streamlines your SOC 2, your ISO 27001, PCI DSS, GDPR, HIPAA, and other compliance frameworks, providing 24-hour continuous control monitoring so you can actually focus on scaling securely. With a suite of more than 75 integrations, Drata easily integrates through applications like AWS, Azure, GitHub, Okta, and Cloudflare. And countless security professionals from companies like Lemonade, Notion, Bamboo HR, they've shared how crucial it has been to have Drata as a trusted partner in the compliance process. So you can expand security assurance efforts when you're using the Drata platform. That actually allows companies to see all of their controls and easily map them to compliance frameworks to gain immediate insight into framework overlap. Drata's automated dynamic policy templates support companies new to compliance using integrated security awareness training programs and automated reminders. That ensures smooth employee onboarding along the way, which is really nice. As the only player in the industry to build on a private database architecture, your data can never be accessed by anyone outside of your organization. So that's great peace of mind. All customers receive a team of compliance experts. That includes a designated customer success manager. And Drata's team of former auditors has conducted more than 500 audits. So your Drata team keeps you on track. They're going to ensure that there are no surprises, no barriers along the way. Plus, Drata's pre-audit calls will prepare you for when your audits actually begin. Now, Drata's Audit Hub is a solution to faster, more efficient audits as well. You can save hours of that back and forth communication. Save that, never misplace crucial evidence, and share documentation instantly at the drop of a hat. All interactions and data gathering can occur in Drata between you and your auditor, so you aren't going to have to switch between different tools or correspondence strategies. With Drata's risk management solution, you can manage end-to-end risk assessment and treatment workflows. You can flag risks, score them. You can even decide whether to accept, mitigate, transfer, or avoid them entirely. Drata maps appropriate controls to risks. That simplifies risk management and automating the process as well. Drata's Trust Center provides real-time transparency into security and compliance posture. That's going to improve sales, your security reviews, and build better relationships with your customers and your partners. So say goodbye to manual evidence collection. Say hello to automated compliance by visiting drata.com/twit. And I'll spell that out for you. It's DRATA. That's drata.com/twit, bringing automation to compliance at Drata speed. We thank them for their support of Tech News Weekly. All right, so let's talk a little bit about car infotainment systems, because I mean, my experience with infotainment systems is always like I have yet to have one that doesn't have at least a little bit of frustration along the way. I'm curious to know what you have in your car, Mikah.
I have an older vehicle, which means that the infotainment system that was built in did not come with any of the new stuff. It just had like a Bluetooth connection at the most. So I went and installed an aftermarket system that supports Apple CarPlay. And so I use Apple's CarPlay in my vehicle. And we are an Apple CarPlay household. My partner also, his vehicle's new enough that it just came with the system, but it also has Apple CarPlay. And neither of us really ever touch the default system that is, built in. We kind of skip past that and go straight to Apple CarPlay as quickly as we can.
Yeah, and kind of streaming from your phone, that sort of thing. Well, it turns out. So my situation is similar to yours in one vehicle. We have one vehicle that has like a dated, it's like a 2014. So it has its own apps and stuff inside of it, but it's very much isolated to like the Toyota 2014 experience, and things have come a long way since then. So really we're just using it for like the XM radio, and then connecting via Bluetooth, and any of the rest of the bells was like the onboard navigation, not using it. The other car we have, it's a Tesla, so it's got its own, Tesla doesn't do Android Auto, it doesn't do CarPlay, which I feel like is a big missed opportunity and a bummer. But so there's some things that are good about it, and some things that are frustrating. Well, it turns out people aren't very satisfied with what they're getting inside their vehicles. JD Power has a yearly study that's been doing now for 28 years, the Automotive Performance Execution and Layout Study, and just came out. And for the first time ever, the report shows consecutive year-over-year declines in owner satisfaction. And one big cause for that, and that's just like overall, right? One big cause for that drop is isolated to the infotainment systems. In 2020, 70% of people preferred to use their car's infotainment system, which actually when I hear that sounds kind of high to me. Like if the infotainment system is something aside from something like CarPlay or Android Auto, like I'd be amazed if 70% were like super satisfied with it. But apparently, according to their report, that was the case. In the latest report, only 56%. And I think last year, it was a drop from 70% as well. So it's kind of like this steady decline in people's satisfaction with their infotainment system. Less than half of the owners shared their desire to use the car's built-in controls for things like navigation, voice recognition, calls. I know in our Toyota,
so bad.
Yeah, they're bad. Like it's got navigation, but it's so complicated compared to what you got, what I have on my phone, or the voice recognition. Like I use it sometimes to read an incoming text message just because it's easier for me to hit the button on the screen in the Toyota than it is to hit it on the phone sometimes. But it's super robotic, and it gets many words wrong, and there's no inflection. I mean, it's 10 years old basically at this point. So you can imagine, the systems that the text to voice that we were hearing 10 years ago versus what we hear now, which is actually pretty impressive. I feel like it's come so far. But this is all related to the built-in systems, just as a clarification. When often they're designed and they're presented by the car company itself. So when it comes to things like CarPlay or Android Auto, people actually seem pretty satisfied, and big surprise is because they are actually a lot better than those built-in systems. The report does show that systems built around Android Automotive score higher in the infotainment category than those with no Android Automotive OS whatsoever. And this might actually require a little bit of an explanation because it can get a little confusing in the realm of Android and the car. Android Auto is the car experience that streams from your phone to the system, similar to how AirPlay works for iOS. Android Automotive OS is Google's built-in automotive OS. So, it would be kind of like the built-in in-dash.
Companies install that in their cars is right. How that works.
Yes, essentially install that in their cars, and it would have controls, depending on how the companies integrate with it. It would have controls over more things than just like your infotainment. It would have controls over your air conditioner, and it could even tap into, your mileage and all that stuff on a separate screen. Some cars have Android Automotive OS kind of stretching across all of the glass in there that would get a screen and it would operate it all. So they're kind of different things. So when people have Android Automotive OS in their vehicle, apparently, according to this report, that's the highest level of satisfaction that people were reporting. But this is where things kind of get a little fragmented because you can get Android Automotive OS installed in a vehicle with Google's automotive services. So things like Google's apps and services, very akin to Android, by the way. You can get Android phones that have all of Google's apps and services. And then you can get that OS without those services by default. So it might be Amazon that's inserting kind of their apps and services on top of it. Apparently that's found some Stellantis, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, vehicles that have Android Automotive OS, but Amazon provides the apps and the integration there with the services and stuff. So in that case, if you're getting Android Automotive OS without Google's automotive services, they actually scored the lowest of them all in the infotainment category. So apparently people really like the Google apps and services. Personally, I'm hardly surprised about that. But anyways, I thought the report was just kind of interesting. And because I do feel like I'm so often disappointed by the in-dash infotainment system offerings that I've seen in the different vehicles that, when we rent a vehicle and everything. If it doesn't have the Android Auto kind of like streaming or the CarPlay streaming, I'm usually pretty disappointed. So this report seems to reflect that.
Yeah. So this is always interesting to me too, because there's so many components to understanding who is, partaking in the surveys and how sort of culturally those aspects play, because we have seen overall, generationally speaking, a drop in car ownership. We've seen, and even when there's not a drop in car ownership, we've seen vehicle affinity dropping. It used to be like, it's part of your personality, what vehicle you own and drive. And a lot of folks, of the generation younger than mine, are saying, it's even less, the car doesn't, it's just this tool that gets me from, one place to the other. And so all of that factors into who is answering, these surveys, what their thoughts are on the surveys. And then you also have, I feel there's in some cases, a difference, sort of personality and culturally, whenever you're talking about, what systems folks are using. I think about how this is anecdotally speaking, but I wonder if there's like a larger thing here. It's tended to be the people I know who are the car fixers and tinkerers who go in and they like add LED lights to their car and they, soup up the engine and they replace their headlights with LED light. They have anecdotally been Android users. And I wonder, the Android users sort of from the group that I hear from are always talking about how what they love about Android is its ability to be, customized and changed and all this kind of thing. And so there's so many factors that can play into this. But what seems to be universally true is we all hate the systems that these car manufacturers build into the cars. And yet who is it? GM, whoever it was that was saying, yeah, we're thinking about ditching any third party infotainment system in our vehicles going forward. How foolish.
Yeah, that's right. This was just last March, phasing out CarPlay in EVs, which I agree. It's kind of like if people are telling you that they're incredibly satisfied about this thing, even if you don't control it, like, I don't know, like you want people to be satisfied with their vehicle experience. They bought a vehicle from you. This is like one aspect that, like, just let it be. Let them get what they want. And I suppose you could just offer, because some manufacturers do this where they offer their own infotainment system that supports also CarPlay and Android Auto. And so you get the best of all worlds, I suppose, that way. But, they all want to control it all. And I suppose there's some sort of monetary incentive there behind them controlling everything. And
data gathering.
Exactly. And so as a result, you end up with people who are not satisfied. And that doesn't seem like a good thing.
No, because then people, I think it's one of those, what is that game? Not Kitty Cat, where you've got two vehicles or two people running at each other and then one of them moves.
Chicken? Game of chicken?
Chicken, yes, chicken. It's like a game of chicken a little bit. Like the car manufacturers are going, well, everybody needs a car. So whatever we do, you're going to end up needing a car anyway. And then the people on the other side are like, but I want a car that makes me happy and gives me the things that I need. And it's like, who's going to twitch first? But the way things are going, those car manufacturers might want to stop thinking like it's, 1982. I don't know what year people were really
like
into
it's
cars.
The 1900s.
Yes, some time ago when people were super into cars and it was everything, and they did their little cruises down, 1950s, we'll say. Yeah.
There you go. So getting fed up with your infotainment system, you're not alone. That's all that we're going to say about that.
And that's all she wrote.
That's all she wrote. We've reached the end of this episode of Tech News Weekly. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We do this show every Thursday. If you go to twit.tv/TNW, you will find all the ways that you can subscribe to the show. And we do appreciate when you subscribe, because then you'll get the episode like magic. But that's a really wonderful signal that is sent to us. We know how many people are downloading. We pass that along to our advertisers and our sponsors. That keeps the show on in your podcast feed week after week. So thank you. When you subscribe, please do that. twit.tv/TNW.
We also appreciate it when you join the club at twit.tv/clubtwit. For starting at $7 a month or $84 a year, you out there can join the club. And when you do, you get some great stuff. Every single Twit show with no ads, including this one, you are in effect supporting the content. So you just get the content. You also get access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra stuff you won't find anywhere else, behind the scenes, before the show, after the show. Special Club Twit events get published there. And you gain access to the Club Twit Discord, a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members and also those of us here at Twit. It is always on and popping in the club. There are events that stream live from the club. And again, this all is available starting at $7 a month. Now, it's not a tiered system. It's not like, Discord's going to cost you $2 extra or anything like that. It's just that some folks said $7 a month. That's a really good price, which it is. If you look at the other club systems out there, or the plus systems out there, they tend to be a lot more money. So folks said, hey, I'd like to give you some more than just $7 a month. So that's why I say starting at. You can choose to go up from there if you'd like to help support us. And we do appreciate it. Along with all of that, you can also gain access to some Club Twit exclusive shows. Yes, we've got exclusive club shows in the club, including the Untitled Linux Show, which is a show all about Linux. There's also Paul Thurrott's Hands on Windows program, which covers Windows tips and tricks. My Hands on Mac program, which covers Apple tips and tricks. And the Home Theater Geeks program, which relaunched in the club with Scott Wilkinson, covering all things home theater. Soon, there will also be an AI show to hit the club. Jason is currently noodling on that, and so it should make its way there soon. And I am looking forward to checking out that show. The only way for you to check out that show is by joining the club. So please do. It is an immense help. We thank those of you who have joined. I'm always popping into the Club TWiT Discord because it shows whenever new folks join the Discord, there's a welcome page. And so all day, every day, we're seeing new folks joining the club, and we just appreciate each and every one of you. And thank you so much for your support. So please consider joining the club, checking out that extra content, again, at twit.tv/clubtwit. If you'd like to follow me online, I'm at Mikah Sargent at many a social media site, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. Please check out Hands on Mac later today. If you are a member of the club, I'm covering macOS Sonoma, which is the next version of macOS. It's going to be hitting. It's available in public beta, so folks might want to check out some of these new features. So I'm just talking about the new features you can see. And on Sundays, you can watch Ask the Tech Guys, featuring Leo Laporte and I, Mikah Sargent, where we take your tech questions live on air and do our best to answer them while also just having a great time. It's kind of a variety show. We have a great time and love to have you there. And then on Tuesdays, you can check out iOS Today with Rosemary Orchard and myself, where we cover all things Apple. It's basically everything but macOS. So pretty much all of the mobile operating systems we cover on the show. And we'd love to have you tune in there. If you've got an iPhone or an iPad or something, you got to be watching that show because we've got so many tips and tricks and great apps you should check out. Jason Howell, what about you?
Well, find me at Jason Howell on, are we calling it X or are we calling it Twitter? We didn't even talk about that today.
Oh, that's right. It's 10, formerly known as Twitter. You know, he's never said it out loud, so it might be 10, the Roman numeral.
I hadn't thought about that. Okay. That's news because I feel weird calling it X. It's just feels weird.
So I spent years as a copy editor, and it was part of my role. And obviously the copy editor's Bible is the AP style book. And so I've been checking, and AP style book has updated their guidance, and they are calling it X or 10, formerly known as Twitter. That is the current guidance for how we refer to the platform. So,
oh boy, that's even easier.
Yeah.
You can find me at Jason Howell on X, formerly known as Twitter. You can find me on Mastodon, twit.social/@Jason Howell. You know what I need to do? I need to put together one of those pages, a chihuahua.coffee, but for me. So I'll have to figure that out. So I have all my links on a page.
Yeah,
that
you should.
Rattling them all off. Anyways, you can find me on the internet. I'm there. Just do a search for my name. You'll find me. And then behind the scenes working on things like the AI show for Club TWiT. Of course, producing This Week in Tech every week, Twig, Security Now. So they keep me busy around here, but I enjoy it nonetheless as well. So thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you. We appreciate everyone at the studio for helping us do this show each and every week. Can't thank you all enough. And we will see you next time on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here. In case you hadn't heard, Home Theater Geeks is back. Each week, I bring you the latest audio-video news, tips and tricks to get the most out of your AV system, product reviews, and more. You can enjoy Home Theater Geeks only if you're a member of Club TWiT, which costs $7 a month, or you can subscribe to Home Theater Geeks by itself for only $2.99 a month. I hope you'll join me for a weekly dose of home theater geekitude.